Hello, and welcome back to Mammalian Anatomy at Keuka College. In this video, we're going to continue our conversation of Chapter 16, the Special Senses, and we're going to continue to talk about the amazing eye. In the last video, we looked at the anatomy of the eye and introduced some of its structures and their functions. But here, we're going to get into some really cool stuff. We're going to look at the eye as an optical device, and we're going to study some of the optics and physics behind how the eye works and how the eye bends light so we can focus on objects that are near or far away. So let's kind of get into it. So much geeking out time, I can't even tell you. So the eye is really amazing because it's capable of refracting light, meaning that it can bend light like a prism or like lenses of glasses. And it will bend light so it can hit a particular focal point on the retina. In this particular conversation and in the conversation in your textbook, we're going to focus on single point images just to make it easier to kind of learn the concept. But note that the focusing on the retina is actually a multi-point image that is going to be much more complex. So be aware that we are kind of simplifying the process that we're talking about here. All right, so kind of with that kind of disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about it. So the eye can refract light, and it can bend this light onto the retina. And this is required so that we can actually see and focus on objects that are far away or nearby and still be able to see them clearly. There are different structures that are capable of bending light in the eye. We kind of introduced these already, such as the cornea, the lens, and the humors of the eye, such as the aqueous and vitreous humor. And together we call these refractory media. So let's kind of talk about it in more detail. So when light, so to be able to see objects in our environment, what will happen is light will be emitted from a light source, and it will hit the object and be reflected towards our eyes. When it's reflected towards our eyes are capable of refracting the light to be able to focus it onto our retina. The cornea, because of its significant curvature, refracts most of the light. It will bend the light most of the way, but the lens can make fine adjustments to that focus. And so it can bend the light a lot or a little depending on what we need to be able to allow the light to hit the retina properly. This adjustment is accomplished by changing the curvature of the lens. So the lens can be stretched and then therefore flattened, or it can be relaxed and therefore bulged. And changing this curvature is known as accommodation. To change the curvature of the lens, we're going to rely on the ciliary muscles that are found in the ciliary body. And these muscles are physically attached to the lens using the ciliary zonules, or we can call them suspensory ligaments. I'm going to call them suspensory ligaments because they're a little bit easier to say. And so when these muscles contract and relax, they're going to stretch and relax the lens, changing its curvature, and therefore changing how much the lens will refract the light and focusing the light onto the retina. So let's give an example of this. So I want to focus on the diagram. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a moment to write this information down. You can pause, and then I'm going to go to a larger diagram as a result. kind of. Okay. So if we are looking at an object that is far away, what will happen is light will be reflected off of the object. And if it's far away, many of the rays of light are going to be parallel to each other, like so. We'll see that this is different when we look at objects that are nearby. So if the light is parallel, what will happen is it will enter the eye, and as it passes through the curvature of the cornea, the light will bend, and it will bend inward like so, and it will hit the lens. Because the light enters the eye in a parallel direction and the cornea does most of the bending of the light, the lens doesn't have to do much adjustment to it. So it doesn't have to change the focus very much. And so here what's going to happen is the lens is going to be relatively kind of flat. And how do we create that flat lens? So using sympathetic stimulation, we're actually going to cause the ciliary muscles to relax. And when they relax, the ciliary muscles will tighten the ciliary zonules, or the suspensory ligaments. And when the suspensory ligaments pull against the lens will actually flatten. And because of this, the light won't bend very much in the lens. And this way, the image will be projected onto the retina and it will hit the photoreceptors where that light can be detected. Yes, no, maybe so. So when an object is far away, the rays of light are roughly parallel. The cornea will do most of the bending of that light, and therefore the lens doesn't have to accommodate that light very much, so it will be relatively flat. However, this will be different when we look at objects that are nearby. So I'm gonna leave this slide up for a moment so you can pause and write it down, but then we'll go to the next image again. Okay, let us go into it. Okay, so here, if an object is nearby, what happens is the rays of light are no longer parallel. Rather, they are going to be diverging from each other. And so they'll kind of come in at like outward angles to each other. As the light passes through the cornea will bend the light over here. But the angle that the light is coming in is a little bit too tight. So the lens has to accommodate that angle of light, and it will have to bend the light more significantly to be able to cause the image to hit the retina properly. So to increase the bend of the light, or the refraction of the light, the lens will have to bulge. So it will become more convex. So how does the eye accommodate this? What will happen is the ciliary muscles will actually experience parasympathetic input. And what will happen is they will contract as a result, and they'll kind of get closer to each other, kind of act like a sphincter and decrease their size. And so what will happen is when this contraction occurs, the ciliary zonules, or the suspensory ligaments, will relax, and they won't pull as much on the lens. And so what will happen is the lens will relax and become a bit more bulged. And this will increase the amount of refraction that the lens is capable of doing. And so as a result, even if the light is coming in at a different angle into the eye, the image can be reflected, or the image can be projected onto the retina at the proper size. So the lens can accommodate these different angles that are of light that are coming in and ensures that the image is projecting on the retina properly. Not only will we use the lens to help focus the light on the retina if an object is nearby, we're also going to use pupillary constriction to limit the amount of divergent rays of light from entering the eye. So as we talked about before, when an object is nearby, the light entering the eye is divergent. And so when it comes into the eye, the divergent light that is bent by the cornea would actually have to pass through the extreme edges of the lens. This can actually lead to blur. So to prevent that from occurring, the pupils can actually constrict. And when they constrict, they will actually limit the most divergent rays of light from entering the eye. And so the light will come in, the rays of light that are more parallel will come into the eye. And so therefore the lens doesn't have to work as hard to accommodate those more parallel rays of light. This will decrease the blur that the eyes will see. And this actually functions a lot like a pinhole camera. So let's look at an image of that. So if an object, so let's look at a pinhole camera. So a pinhole will be like a little dot, not a dot, but a little hole that will allow light to enter. And what will happen is the other areas of the pinhole camera will prevent divergent areas of light from entering the eye. So here, let's pretend that an object is nearby and the light would be divergent, so it'd be going up and down. That would lead to a really strong angle going in through the cornea and going in through the lens. And that would project a lot of light onto the back of the retina. What a pinhole camera does is it actually blocks the outermost light and only allows for parallel light to enter the eye. And so as it comes in, the cornea will bend the light, and only the light that is going through these center regions of the lens will go through and hit the back of the retina. So we will have a much smaller beam of light hitting the retina if we only allow a small amount of light to go through the eye or go through the pupil here. So yes, no, maybe so. This actually helps with focusing. You can actually play around with this using your hands. If you make a tiny hole with your fingers, like so, you can actually put that over your eye and it will almost act like a pinhole camera or like the iris of your eye. And it will limit the divergent light coming into your eye. And as a result, it's going to help create a more focused, crisper image as a result. So this would be without having a pinhole, and this would be using a pinhole to be able to control which rays of light enter the eye. So that's cool, geeky. I hope you give it a try and check it out. And the last thing I want to mention is because the lens is a convex structure, as light is going to come through the lens and hit the retina, it will actually invert the image like all convex structures do, or convex lenses do. So not only will the image hit the retina upside down, but it will also be flipped left and right. And so the retina and the photoreceptors will detect an upside down inverted image of what it sees in its external environment. That's okay, because when the information is sent to the cerebral cortex will account for this, and it will flip the image in our mind. And so we will see everything kind of right side up, perceive everything right side up, as it would be in the external environment. So, as we've seen with our discussion about the eye as an optical device and the importance of focusing light onto the retina so that it can create a clear image, we can kind of apply this to a clinical setting, and we can talk about nearsightedness and farsightedness, and how do we correct for these changes in vision. So nearsightedness is referred to as a myopia. And so a myopic eye is actually going to be an eye that is a little bit too wide, anteriorly versus posteriorly. It's a little bit too long. And so when the light is trying to be focused onto the retina, what will happen is that the focal point will fall short of the retina. If it was a typical or shaped eye, which had 20/20 vision, the retina would fall along here. But we see in a person that has a myopic eye or nearsightedness, the retina is a little bit too far away, so that focal point doesn't hit the retina. And so this will cause the person's vision to be blurry. The bigger the deviation from what is like 20/20 shape of the eye, the more blurry the vision will be. So this is the type of vision that I have. I am very, very nearsighted, to the point where they have to actually check my retinas every year to make sure they're still attached. And so, yeah, so this would be the shape of my eye. To correct that, we would actually use concaved lenses. These concaved lenses are going to take the parallel lines of light and actually cause the light to diverge. And as it diverges, it's going to be bent by the retina and the lens, and come in and actually focus on the more posterior part of the retina. So we have to cause the light to diverge, then enter the eye to be focused so that it can hit the correct part of the retina to be clear. So if you ever see me talking with my glasses on, you can see that my glasses will create a weird optical effect as a result of that. When you look at my face straight on, you'll notice, like, if you look through my lenses, my face will look a lot more narrow than the rest of my face because of the significant curvature that is in my lenses to account for my nearsightedness. So, and also when I'm wearing my glasses, my eyes look much smaller than when I'm not wearing my glasses because of that optical effect. A person that is farsighted has hyperoptic eyes. Here what's happening is their eyes are a bit short in the anterior and posterior direction. Oops. So as the information is coming in, the cornea and the lens will actually refract the light and bend the light, but the focal point will actually lie behind the retina. So the eye is too short to be able to focus on that focal point. So again, that's going to lead to blurriness when you're trying to look at objects. To be able to correct that, you would actually use a convex lens instead of a concave lens. So as a parallel light is coming through, that will actually cause the light to bend, and it will cause the light to kind of converge instead before it enters the eye, and it gets further bent by the cornea and the lens. And eventually that light and that focal point will be a better hitting on the retina. So it'll be right where it's supposed to be. This actually will cause people's eyes to look a little bit larger when they're wearing glasses. My mom has far-sighted vision, and so whenever she wears her glasses, it looks like a kind of a fish lens. It kind of makes her eyes look much bigger instead. So that's some clinical applications of this information. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I will see you in our next video about vision. We'll talk about the physiology of vision together. Have a wonderful day and be good to yourselves. Bye-bye.